Everybody, I'm Bob Bakert with Jazz Guitar Today, and we're here with Jonathan Kreisberg, who who is on tour. How very cool. You're out. That's what we're talking about. We're going to talk about your shows coming up. Jonathan, for those of you who don't know, is a New York City guitar player and phenomenal player. Before we talk about your tour, let me just say this. I think you get the award for my favorite tone of the week. Man, that ES-175 you're playing sounds so freaking good.
Well,
And if there was,
thanks, man.
if
I
there
guess
was,
you'll
well,
get to hear it live soon, so
it's
hopefully it'll live
well,
up to.
obviously, the hands are a big deal. I mean, there's no everybody, it's in the hands, it's in the hands, it's in the. Well, I have a counter argument to that, but yes, there's most of it is a lot of it's in the hands, but there is a counter argument. It has to do with the analogy would be race cars. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But the bottom line is, man, your guitar. Oh, here's your little puppy.
Yeah,
Your
he likes to
guitars,
be a
your
part of the
guitar,
action.
it's an old ES-175. Was a 61 or something like that? What year is that guitar?
It's a mid '70s.
Mid
It's a.
70s.
I actually thought it was earlier, and
Yeah.
then someone told me there was a little aberration in the Gibson numbers that year. So it's actually a '76. Yeah.
Man, if you want to hear a sweet sounding guitar, go to YouTube, Jonathan Kreisberg, and listen to the tone of that guitar. And you're playing, of course, you're playing is stellar. You're really playing
Thanks,
really,
thanks,
really
Bob.
well. Yeah, it's phenomenal. Who you got there?
That's Jocko.
Hey Jocko, hit me
I
some lines, man.
I forgot to close the door, so yeah, he likes to be a part of the action.
I love Jocko. So you're on tour. Um, and I think that's really cool. So we want to talk about that a little bit because everybody's kind of getting back out some again. COVID, I guess, is not the problem that it was, and now life is kind of coming back to us, and it's great. And you're coming. What's exciting is I know you're coming to Atlanta to the Velvet Note, but you are going to be in Greenville, Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, Chicago, Illinois, Durham, North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina, and Alpharetta, Georgia, as well as Greenville, South Carolina. All those dates go between October 22nd and October 29th. Um, the important date to me, of course, is you're going to be here in Alpharetta, which is Atlanta, on October 28th at the Velvet Note. And you're coming, most of these dates I see are with a trio. There's some exceptions. There's some quartet dates coming up and all that. So how's it feel to get back out on the road like this again? Have you been out so far, or is this kind
Yeah,
of the first
it's
time?
been crazy. I basically, as soon as the pandemic hit, the timing was kind of perfect. I had just put out, I mean, not that anything like that is perfect. That's the wrong phrase. Uh,
We know what you mean.
the timing of it worked out because luckily, I had just put out a live album, and I felt like kind of a chapter had been, at least kind of, you know, uh, solidified kind of with that recording. And I really had been hitting it hard for a good amount of years before that with my group and also with Dr. Lonnie Smith, my
Sure.
two main gigs. And I was, I don't want to say burnt, but I was like ready to kind of have some different things going on. And I had already been thinking about the Explorations of Note program, which is this thing that I just, as soon as the pandemic hit, I just poured my energy into it, which was this, to me, my own take on jazz education, whatever that is. You know what I mean? I have I've had great teachers in the past, but of course, like any person with strong opinions, I had some new ideas that I wanted to add to the canon of that. And it was really it is a very big part of my life now. We've got 400 members or something like that. And that really took up a lot of my time for 2 years.
All right, tell us the name of it again.
Explorations of Note. Yeah.
By you, I mean, is it Jonathan
Yeah,
Kreisberg's
yeah. It's
exploration?
easy to find on my website. It's a membership program, and it's hundreds of hours of lessons and PDFs, hundreds of pages. It's a really big undertaking, and so anyone who's interested in just getting some fresh ideas, that's definitely something I recommend as a resource, and it's still happening now that I'm touring. But that's what's been happening the last 2 or 3 months is I've been figuring out how to balance. I began touring in June again, and it's been pretty much nonstop. So trying to balance those two very important parts of my life have been interesting.
Explorations of Note.
Yeah.
What's really interesting? you're a significant player for a lot of reasons, but this specific reason that I take note of what you're doing. Okay, you're a beautiful combination of an old school player and a new school player. I mean, you're definitely new school, but it's not Oz Noy new school. You know what I'm saying? It's not it's not you're not playing heavy overdrive Stratocasters and
Right,
all
right.
that kind of thing.
Who
Um,
we're actually playing next month together. So it's funny
well,
that
no, I love
mentioned it.
Oz. I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
love Oz, and I love that style too. In fact,
Yeah, yeah, sure.
that's not what I'm saying.
No, but
But
I hear you. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've got a lot of, I'm always very conscious of the fact that for me, for the way I see music, and everybody has to have their own perspective if they want to have a strong voice. I like this idea of music as this timeline, and as you go forward, you can go just, you can keep going even further back. So, I mean, I've even through the program, I've even been going back as far as like Renaissance music. You know what I mean? So it's
right,
always you can always go back and take things you like, and also just probably a lot of that's just my tone. I like as much as I add things to the guitar, I really like to also come back to just the tone of the guitar. You know what I mean? I mean, I definitely use uh altering electronic substances,
substances.
yeah, that's the first time I thought of it that way. Just to kind of get a different perspective. You know what I mean? So I'll put the effects on top of that, and sometimes to shape it. But at the end of the day, I do love the sound of a pick hitting a string, and I love the sound of my old Gibson, and I love tubes. All these things that are kind of associated with a more traditional tone, and some of it's just also like some of my things that maybe people thought when they first checked me out was something different, was especially when I play in trio, was the way I was using certain voicings and stuff while I was playing. But the truth of the matter is, I was just trying to sound like piano trios that I liked. You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Hmm.
that in a way sounded modern, but it was actually just a guitarist doing something that a pianist had done, 20 years earlier,
Fareed Haq had a great quote to me, quote to me, but he said that very little, there's really very little to no one, quote unquote, that of guitar players moving the jazz guitar forward, like Herbie moved piano forward.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so, but I think that you're onto something here. I feel you are definitely moving it forward in a way. Man, because your use of melody to you're really the whole thing about your tone and your feel is that you really play melody great, and you can hear every note, and every note rings with a beautiful bell-like tone, almost as if someone was just playing that perfect horn note. I mean, it's really great stuff, man. I mean, applaud, 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 applaud.
Thanks,
um
thanks.
yeah, and it's, I know that you're I don't want to say you're anal retentive, but you're very anal about everything you do. I mean, you drill it down to the max, to get everything you can out of everything. You want it perfect. And I think you've done that, man. I mean, the sound that I'm hearing out of your guitar and the way you're playing it, you got chops galore, but you're playing, these beautiful, sweet melodies that are it's just great. And I got one more. Let me just, before you respond to that. So, and when did you become the duo guy with Nelson Veras and Pete Bernstein? Playing with those guys, man. Wow.
Oh well, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a guitar player that doesn't like playing duo with other guitar players. It's just such a fun setting, um, and those are two really different relationships. I mean, Pete and I, we've known each other for years. Of course, I have massive respect for Pete. He embodies the jazz mentality. He's pretty much the guy who's really carried the original concept and done it in his own way. That's still, he's somehow playing the tradition, but he's just doing it in totally his own way, and I love that. I mean, everyone has such great respect for him. So whenever I can grab a duo gig with Pete, we've done it over the years. Actually, he reminded me, I couldn't even remember this, when I first moved to New York, we did I got him to do a gig with me. We did a gig in a coffee house, and I didn't even remember that. It was so, we're talking 20 years ago or something like that.
Right.
But over the years, we just every once in a while do them, and that's great. It's not necessarily a project, but at some point, it would be great to do more with them. I mean, it's definitely a very cool sound, and definitely the other end of the spectrum from my other duo project, which is the thing that is Nelson Veras, which Nelson probably around that same time, years ago, someone, Peter Maza actually played me a tape of some guy.
Uh-huh.
He said, "Man, you got to hear this guy on nylon string,"
Yeah,
and
he's
my
fantastic.
jaw dropped to the floor, And Nelson's like, from Pete, he's on the other end of the spectrum. Even though Nelson actually loves jazz and really knows a lot of, he can play you back a bird solo and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's wonderful. Both those guys are amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and that's probably the I'm somewhere in between them probably, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
And when I went to Paris once, I was there with Ari Honig. We had some gigs. I kind of found where Nelson was playing, and we finally met. This is probably about maybe 13 years ago, 12, 13 years ago, maybe 10
Right.
years, something like that. And we talked and we kept in touch after that, just kind of, the way guitar players would, but also like I'd say even on a personal level, we just really somehow recognized right away we were kind of like brothers, like just really different personalities that somehow worked well together.
Right.
And next time I came to Paris, I had a couple of days off, and I said, "Man, let's do a gig." So we did a gig, and quite honestly, that first gig sounded pretty much exactly how it does now. Like we never had to work on anything. It was somehow the styles really meshed. So then years passed, and finally I it was next. I just said, "Look, we got to do it. Let's do an album." So he actually flew over here, and we did the record in like 2 days. He flew back. It was like a crazy kind of thing. And since then, we tour quite a bit. Actually, we're playing all the time, and I always
It's
come back from one of those tours ready to practice because
yeah.
he's just like a wellspring of ideas.
It's truly phenomenal, and the juxtaposition of your two styles together really, really, really works. Both you and
Thanks.
Nelson,
Yeah, I
and
got I
you
got to
and
get him a visa at some point so we can
yeah,
tour the U.S.
and
That's
you and Peter. I mean, it's you guys. It's you complement each other so much. It's really. I mean that's that's high living, brother. That is high living for
Yeah,
them
yeah.
and you,
I would
because
love to do more with Pete. Pete's a very busy cat, but yeah, I'm gonna definitely try and we'll definitely be doing some more stuff. At some point. I love his playing.
oh, it's he's the quintessential guy as far as I'm concerned. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's a, that's where that's
I'm
I guess that
if I'm playing with either of those two guys, I'm pretty lucky. That
yeah,
would
I was
be.
gonna say you're swimming in some pretty but you're
Yep.
you know what I mean, they're lucky too, man, because you're bringing some sweet stuff as well, and don't they're it's a very it's a really both of those things are really really nice. So
Yeah.
let's
Thanks a lot.
we don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
take up too much of your time today, so let's talk a little bit about what people can expect on this these shows that are coming up.
yeah,
So
yeah.
they
So like
they
you
show
noticed,
up.
I'm doing some quartet and some trio. I decided to do. I've been experimenting more with doing because I've done a lot of trio gigs in New York, and when on the road, I usually bring the quartet or I'm playing with Nelson. So I'm starting to experiment more with taking the trio. The trios tend a little more introspective than the quartet, but I'm kind of finding ways to kind of be extrospective
So for
as
those
well.
people out
So
there, when you bring in a quartet, you're bringing in what instruments?
Martin Bejarano on piano. Yeah, he's
Hmm.
coming up from Miami. That's the other thing. Martin doesn't live in New York, so but I'm really happy to be. I really wanted to do the full quartet. It's a couple places I'm playing for the first time. I'm actually playing Chicago for the first time with a quartet, actually, at the Jazz Showcase. So I'm really
How does the
excited about
music
that
change
one.
from trio to quartet? How do you
Well,
what's
my
different?
role changes because
Of
I'm
course.
not the pianist at that point. In the trio, it's like a piano trio basically.
Hmm.
And in the quartet, I would say I do more originals in the quartet.
Mm.
And in the trio, it's a little more a combination of originals and kind of interpretation of standards or different arrangements and stuff. Although that's changing now as I'm kind of working on a different trio kind of repertoire for touring with the trio, which I'd like
Right.
to do some more too. It's really tough. I like them both. I mean, all these settings are so interesting in their own ways, you know.
And
But
you've played for, with Dr. Lonnie Smith so long, which is an organ trio.
that's
So
another thing.
that's
Yeah,
a because that's
I mean, you could argue that the organ trio is almost like the ultimate setup, you know, because you've got a drummer creating
yeah,
that energy and that groove, and then you've got an organ that's always playing, and then you've got a guitar that's always playing. No
right,
one's stopping. You know what I mean?
right.
And so there's never like that moment that there's one guy on stage who does the solo and goes and chills. Like in a piano quartet, I don't like to play too much during the piano solos, so it's a little bit like it's a different experience. With the organ trio, it's like you start that set and it's like you guys are just hopefully in sync for the next hour. You know what I mean?
It's like flying a small airplane. When the wheels are up, you're committed.
It's a
You
lot
know.
like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So it's yeah, yeah. They're all such fun settings for their own. You know, at the same time in a piano quartet, what's great, especially for the guys I've been playing with, like Martin Bejarano or Marco Chernchech, these piano players are monsters. So it's cool because I can sit back and hear them play and go, whoa, okay. I gotta really find some stuff because they're going someplace. You know what I mean? And it's
yeah.
inspiring in a different way. So all these settings, you just have to really look at them for what they are and flow with it and go with it. And then any setting can be interesting. And I'm really, this is also kind of like I've been experimenting a lot with different lineups, different. So this is kind of a new bunch of guys that I'm bringing on this tour. A great rhythm section, young cats.
The hardest thing for a guy like you, from my perspective, is you're the guitar stallion, and how do you keep you from? I mean, you've got so much facility. You could do whatever the hell you want to do,
Well,
but
every guitar player feel doesn't feel that on the inside.
I know that, but the reality is that you can do. But when I listen to your music and listen to you play, you're able to you're self-editing, if you will. The your taste and the artist in you, is just you've got wonderful feel and taste and passion and empathy for the listener. You're really communicating with the listener, and that's phenomenal. So many guys with that kind of facility, just they want to play, they want to overplay. We hear it all the time. And there's the upper crust guys, the Peters and the Nelsons and you, and we could go, there's a list of people. They play music and
Yeah,
beautifully.
you have to ultimately you have to play what you hear. That's the big thing I'm talking about all the time with my students is, you know, there's always going to be, even in a great player, and Nelson and I have talked about this. It's nice if on the fringe there's some things that you're pushing yourself to maybe play something that you don't quite hear yet. That
Yeah,
you don't want to
right.
get rid of that.
No.
And some do that more than others, but that shouldn't. If ever becomes most of what you play, you're in big trouble. Like
Yeah,
you need to, at any point, hone it in and play what you're hearing at that moment. You know what I mean?
right.
That's and that's our jobs. I think Keith Jarrett had some quote about that where he says it's my job to play what I hear. If I don't like what I'm hearing, then it's my job to go home and find new things to hear. And I thought that was really perfect. I mean, that's exactly how it should work.
Yeah, well, he's yeah, he's got a right to
I
talk
mean,
about that.
that's the
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah, he's that. Yeah, exactly. I was going to say he's yeah. Oh, I'm listening.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, listen. It's great talking to you today. Good luck with the tour. People in. All right, I'm going to go through this list again. People in Granville, Ohio. And the club there is the. Oh, you're going to be at the Guitar
Yeah, that's a
Festival.
guitar festival. Yeah.
All right, cool. And then that's on October 22nd and 23rd. You're going to be at the Bop Stop in Cleveland, Ohio. The 25th, you're going to be at the Jazz Showcase in Chicago, Illinois with the quartet.
Yeah.
Very cool. And October 26th, you're going to be at Sharp Nine Gallery in Durham, North Carolina. What a cool city that is. Then Asheville, another cool city. You're going to be at ISIS in Asheville. Asheville's, you've been to Asheville before?
Yeah, we played there right before the pandemic. It was
Man,
great.
it's a great town. I love that town. It's my one of my favorite East Coast, east of the Mississippi towns.
Yeah.
And then you're going to be in Alpharetta. You're going to be at a club that I know very, very well. I was there last night, as a matter of fact.
Nice.
And the Velvet Note in Alpharetta, Georgia. And then you're going to finish this one up in Greenville, South Carolina, at the center stage with the quartet. So
Yeah.
uh, So if you're close by, man, go check this guy out. He plays his ass
I'll go
off.
start getting that music ready, and I hope to see these people out
Hey
there.
man, so do I. And then the other thing we want to say, exploration of note for the guitar players out there that want to learn from you. Please check out Jonathan on YouTube, man. There's some really, really cool stuff on there. And in the new record, the record you said the most recent one, is that with
Yeah,
Nelson?
capturing spirits.
Capturing Spirits. All right.
Yeah.
You got anything else?
No, I think we're great. Thanks, Bob.
All right, man. Thank you, Jonathan. It's always a
Talk
pleasure,
soon.
buddy. Thank you so much, man. Bye bye. Have a wonderful day.
You too.